That's why every day at this time we bring you first news. It's fair, it's accurate. You get the damn truth. Israel's military said they have now taken their forces out of the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis, wrapping up a phase of their ground offensive against the Hamas terrorist group. Defense officials said they are regrouping, preparing to move into the Hamas last stronghold of Rafah, which is good news, folks. That's the last stronghold for one of the worst terrorist organizations in the world. Israel continues to do the dirty work for the rest of us and have vowed to wipe them out. The withdrawal will be a milestone for Israel with their 6-month war against the terrorists. Ukrainian officials have denied Russian accusations that his country armies fired drones at a nuclear reactor at Europe's largest nuclear power plant. Kremlin's forces have been occupying and running the plant in southern Ukraine since the war began. Ukraine's military intelligence suggests there's been no attack, saying Russia forces routinely fabricate strikes on their power plants. Now, Antony Blinken and Joe Biden want to get the Ukraine into NATO. And what will that mean for us? Well, by NATO's treaty, if Russia continues to fight Ukraine, that would automatically bring all of the NATO nations in the war against Russia. That's more important, folks, than an eclipse. Vatican was in the news today. They have declared the gender-affirming surgery and surrogacy as grave threats to human dignity, putting them on par with abortion and euthanasia. They said it violates God's plan for human life. The Vatican's doctrine issued is called Infinite Dignity, a 20-page declaration that's been in the works for 5 years. It was approved March 25th by Pope Francis, who ordered its publication. How are things going on the salvage operations at the Francis Scott Key Bridge? They've now started removing containers from the deck of that cargo ship. Important step towards reopening the main shipping lane. Officials said that removal of the containers from the deck would continue this week. Crews are progressing towards removing sections of the bridge. It's been trapped there under the mangled steel of that bridge since it slammed in there on March 26, killing 6 workers that were working on the bridge at this time. But already alternate channels are open. Army Corps of Engineers hopes to open access to the channel for larger barge container ships, too, here by the end of April. There was a ferry in Mozambique that sank off their coast. It killed 94 people. A state-run news agency said it sank Sunday afternoon. They thought there were 94, but they're recovering bodies there. 130 people were on the ferry at the time. They were able to get some out of the water, but it sank there, and 94 have perished. What's Joe Biden doing today? He's in Wisconsin announcing details now of another anti-illegal plan to relieve student loan debt. He'll visit Madison after primary voting in that battleground state highlighted weaknesses for him. He's heading to Madison, Wisconsin today to announce another big spending plan to reduce debt for millions and millions of college-bound kids who entered in a contract with our government. That if the government would loan them money to help pay them from school, that they would, when they get out, start paying it back. He wants to forgive all of those loans. Now, the Supreme Court already ruled he can't allocate millions of dollars without the approval of Congress, but they don't care. It's an election year. He's going in with his new plan today to help relieve more debt for student loan holders. Big presidential debate today ahead of the June 2nd elections in Mexico City. Claudia Sheinbaum has a comfortable lead right now with another who is running from Mexico, whose name I cannot pronounce. I'm sorry, I can't do it. They had a debate last night. Candidates responded to questions about health, education, corruption, transparency, violence against women. No questions on border, though, last night for the 2 presidential candidates in Mexico. Now it's time for the eclipse story. Way back in there as far as the importance for the day. Clouds are going to spoil it for a lot of people anyway. It's only going to last about 4 minutes. You're not even going to notice it on your normal day out here. We're only going to get about a 40% coverage anyway, and with clouds throughout the day, it will be unnoticeable. The best spots today will be northern New England and into Canada. Texas is going to have heavy cloud cover today. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, they're all experiencing severe weather and tornadoes and hail. That should be the top story in those areas today because that can kill people.
Right.
It A tornado will take a telescope and fly it right up your ass. If you're not worried about that today, you should be, rather than whether or not you'll be able to see the moon in front of the sun for a couple minutes. But anyway, most places around the country today won't get to see it. Federal Aviation Administration said a Southwest Airlines jet left Denver, had to come back because a cover fell off and struck a wing flap during takeoff. One of the engine covers came loose. It happens. Passengers were put on another aircraft. Second mishap for the airline in a week as a flight from Texas was canceled because of an engine fire. The safety devices on the plane worked and put out the fire, and the plane turned around and landed, and maintenance crews fixed the engine, and the plane took off again. It happens with as many flights as we have every day, folks. But both planes were Boeings. Oh, Boeing. We got to get them because their CEO made $30 million, and that's not fair. So they're going after Boeing. Folks, did you ever think what the airline industry, people like Boeing and others, McDonnell Douglas, Whitney, all these GE, do you ever think what they've done for America with airline travel?
No.
What they have done for the world and what they have done, our military, everything. Think about that sometime, or what they've done for our nation. On the medical front, U.S. Food and Drug Administration has accelerated approval programs meant to give patients early access to some promising cancer drugs. But how often do these drugs improve and extend patients' lives? Well, there's a new study found that most cancer drugs that have been granted accelerated approval to not demonstrate benefits within 5 years. 5 years after the initial accelerated approval, Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel said you should have a definitive answer, but we're not getting them yet. It allows the FDA to grant early approval of some drugs that show promise. Boy, have we learned that a lot about FDA's early approval drugs that they promise will save the world, and then we find out later they were wrong.
Right.
Happens all the time. But the thing about it is, folks, when you have cancer and you're dying, you're willing to take any chance to save your life. In 2013 to 17, there were 46 cancer drugs that were granted accelerated approval. 43% demonstrated a clinical benefit in confirmatory trials. Federal Reserve signaled last fall they were done raising interest rates. But are they? When will the Fed start cutting them? The economy has been bouncing back and forth. No one really knows. Markets are kind of skitterish. Now, AP says, but employers added a huge burst of jobs last month, more than 300,000. Yes, and only one news organization in this town told you that 71,000 of those jobs, folks, another city larger than Bozeman, Montana, was added in government. 71,000 government jobs added in the month of March. Every month, folks, government adds. Just think of that. A city the size of Bozeman or larger, government job. Government job costing you and me and your property taxes to go up, and federal tax. At government, they will not stop it from growing. Stocks posted some gains on Wall Street Friday. S&P was up 1.1. The Dow rose 300 points. NASDAQ was up 1.2%. Oil was also up on Friday, folks, as they're sticking it to you. Yep, this current administration's policy on energy, fossil fuel reduction is costing you every day at the pumps. Average price of a gallon of gasoline now in the United States, $3.67. A trial is set to begin against Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway over lung cancer deaths that two people in a northwestern Montana town got and were exposed to from asbestos at the vermiculite mine. Jury selection will start today in Helena. For decades, the W.R. Grace and Company mine produced contaminated vermiculite. Well, the estates of Thomas Wells and Joyce Water argued that the railroad and its corporate predecessors stored that in a large rail yard up in Livy before they shipped it out. The lawsuit argues the railroad failed to contain the dust, which then blew around the town and was inhaled by the residents, therefore causing their death. Wells died in 2020 after giving a deposition talking about his exposure during seasonal work for a company there. He was diagnosed with mesothelioma in the fall of 2019 and then died a few years later. Settlements have run into the millions of dollars for W.R. Grace in the past, and W.R. Grace paid $1.8 billion into a trust fund for individual cases. Powerball player in Oregon got up one morning, left his blue tarp tent on the sidewalk, took a poop, and then went into a convenience store and bought a ticket mark and won $1.3 billion. You know that's the story.
I know.
That got a couple bottles of hardtop and then went back to his tent and and waited for his lucky numbers, and they were picked. $1.326 billion, the eighth largest jackpot we've had now since Powerball has been played. Cash value of $621 million. So if you take about 40% of that out, folks, you can take about $250 million of that out for taxes. So probably get close to $380 million by the time it's all done. Paid to the order of. But there were some other $1 million winners, too, around the country. And Godzilla versus Kong, the New Empire, easily won over the weekend for the second week in a row at the box office. After its $80 million launch last weekend, it brought in $31.7 million this weekend. Monkey Man took in $10 million. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, $9 million. And Kung Fu Panda took in $7.9 million. And everybody that went to all four of those movies will all have their glasses on today at about 2 o'clock, hoping to see the stars, the sun, the moon, and everything align at one time.
You're right.
And it's going to be cloudy, though, so you probably aren't going to even notice it at all in our neck of the woods.
In sports, college basketball, if you watched the semifinal between UConn and Iowa, if you're an Iowa fan, that pick on Gabby Marshall was a foul. If you're a UConn fan, it wasn't a foul. Only a few seconds to go, and they were able to hold on that one. And they stayed with South Carolina all the way till the end, and finally just couldn't get around the height. You've got Purdue and UConn tonight, and John Calipari is moving from Kentucky to Arkansas because he's feeling the pressure because he can't get out of the first round. And you had talked last week about how he was going to get some different kids to come in. They're a little older, more mature. Mm-hmm. And he was making $8.3 million at Kentucky, but he has a friend, a benefactor at Arkansas. And you know what the best kind of friend to have is, Paul?
A benefactor?
A billionaire.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So he's changing schools, and that just came out last night.
Wow. And in that UConn game, that was a foul.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the television networks, though, didn't show you the angle that you can later see on all the sports stations of that foul. Mm-hmm. It was a blatant foul and that had to be called.
She leaned into her.
Oh, leaned into her, stuck her leg out, was full body motion into her with her arm up in the air. It was a foul.
Right. And besides network, you want Iowa to win.
Exactly. Tonight, it's Godzilla versus Kong.
That is, yeah.
Because they got two giants there, one for each team, going against each other. 52 for us today. Still a 30% chance of showers. 40% chance now on Tuesday again. High tomorrow, 58. Warm up as we get to the weekend. We're going to be in the 70s, so you're not going to see a cloudy today. It's eclipse day. But if you believe in astrology, Mark, you know what your horoscope says today?
Why would you be looking at my horoscope?
Because I was going to say, hey, horoscope, you didn't have to tell Mark this.
Okay.
Enjoy yourself. Stir up some romance. It begins a 6-month time frame of fun and passion.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder who the lucky gal is.
Or the lucky burrito. Or, hello, the lucky one of these that's going to have my lips on it by noon today. That's right. So enjoy yourself, Mark.
Well, I got to start checking that every day. That's good advice right there.
Yeah. That's what's happening. Mark and Paul here together, kicking off the work week. Thanks for tuning into The Cat.